Okay, I want to talk a little bit about tonality. This is a very challenging subject for children, and it's even challenging for most of the rest of us too as music teachers. So I'm going to tell you about these things mostly for you as a teacher to help you in your teaching, and not so much for you to teach your students, because this is a subject we don't talk about a lot in primary grades all the way up through 5th grade. You might start talking about key signatures and things of that nature in 4th and 5th grade, but before that it's too overwhelming to their minds, and they've got to have a lot of musical background to be able to understand it well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tonality, and you saw the definition at the beginning of the video. Tonality is the tonal center of the music, or which pitch it is based on, or which scale, or which set of chords. And there's always a primary note that our songs are based on. There's 3 ways we can find the tonality of the music. The first one is by looking at the key signature. And you should have already learned this, but if we haven't gotten there yet, the key signature is found in the music after our clef. So we have our treble clef, and right in this space between the clef and the time signature, these 2 numbers, sometimes there's a C there instead. But this is where the key signature goes. And a key signature is comprised of either sharps or flats. You can't have both of those at the same time. It's either one or the other, or nothing. So our key signature right now is comprised of nothing, which tells me that it's the key of C, because the key of C has no sharps or flats. It's just the white notes on the piano. And so the tonality of this song without a key signature would be C. And that's if it's in major. Again, we gotta look at the mode also. Is it major, is it minor? And there's a few other modes, but those are the 2 that we'll be seeing almost 99% of the time. So what's our key signature? Let me just do a couple more of these. So if I see a sharp sign up at the top, that sharp sign is on the F line. Every good boy does fine. And so that tells me that I have 1 sharp, which is F sharp, and I know that the key signature with 1 sharp goes with G major or E minor. Those have the same key signature. Let's do one with some flats here. So we have 1, 2, 3 flats, B flat, E flat, and A flat. And again, you'll learn more about key signatures when you go through that section. But B flat, E flat, and A flat, we have 3 flats. So that tells me that it's in the key of E flat. And I just have to memorize those. I'll show you a trick to figuring out. I believe there's another video for you to figure out how to find the key signatures. So check that out and try and memorize those little tricks, because they're very helpful. Alright, so that's one way I can find out the tonality. 3 flats, I'm in E flat major or C minor. Okay? The second way to find out my tonality is by looking at the chord symbols. And I'm going to show you some examples of this here in a minute, but above the music, you'll see little symbols. You'll see a C, you'll see B flat, 7, symbols that look like that. And they're telling you what chords go with the music, the harmonic aspect of the music. And obviously most of the songs that we use in this class just have melodies, but you can add harmony by using those chord symbols. So whether you're playing the guitar, that makes it very easy to know what chord to play, or on the piano or whatever, those chord symbols. Now, almost always the last chord symbol of the song is going to tell us our tonality. So if the last chord symbol says D, and I'm going to just say big M, because the big M stands for major. Sometimes you'll see an M, sometimes just a D, but that tells me that's D major. So I know from the last chord that my song is in D major. That's its tonality. It's based on D. If you see something like this with a small m, the small m tells me that it's minor. It's a minor mode. So the tonality, if this were the last chord of the song, would be E minor. Okay? Sometimes the first chord will also tell you that, but not always. Sometimes we start on a chord other than the tonic or the root chord, so you have to be careful. And so probably the best thing to do is look at the last chord of the song. All right, the last way, and this one is the easiest way, but it's also not always accurate. So you have to be careful with this one. So I'd probably use the key signature, or the chord symbols work really well. But if there isn't a chord symbol, like in this song I'm going to show you here in a second, then I would look at the last note. And hopefully that would work. So the last note of the song, let's just pretend that this is the last note of my song, and it's a very short song obviously. But this is a G, every good. So G in my treble clef. That's probably the tonality. Okay, and I can check if it says G above it with the chord symbol, then obviously it is. But sometimes they don't end on the tonal center of the music. So I might be in G major, but it might end on a B, or it might end on a D, because those are all notes that fit within G major just fine. Usually the songs we use for children end on the tonal center, so it's a good thing to look at the last note, but sometimes it's not accurate. It might be the third or the fifth note of that scale. So I'm going to show you a piece of music now. This is a familiar Christmas tune. Let's see if I can get it here. Okay, so here is Jingle Bells. Now you'll notice, first off, we have our clef sign and our time signature numbers, and in the middle we have our key signature. So in this key signature we have two flats, and so if this song is in major, then that would tell me that it's the key of B flat, so the tonality would be B flat. If it's in minor, it's going to be in G. That's the tonality that has two flats in a minor mode. Now you'll notice there's no chord symbols, so that's not helpful at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the last trick. I'm going to look at the last note. One horse open sleigh. Okay, there's my last note, and that is a B flat, just below middle C. So that matches up with the key signature, so we're in the B flat tonality. So there's a good song that teaches you that the last note will show you the tonality, but it's not always the case, so you have to be careful with that. So learn your key signatures and look at the last note, and if there's guitar chords, go ahead and look at that. Let me find one more example here quick. See if we can find one with some guitar chords. See if I can get this out here so you can see everything. Alright, so the three rogues, clef, here's an example of a time signature that's not numbers, but in between we have our key signature, and we have one sharp in our key signature, so that would be G major most likely. So let's look at our first chord, and you'll notice that the first chord does not land on the first note. So there's a pickup into the first chord, which says G. And if I look at my last chord, it says G. So between the key signature and the chords, I definitely know it's G major. And if I look at the last note, it's also G. So there we have our three ways of finding out the tonality. Now, what's the point of knowing the tonality? Why does that even matter? Okay, number one, it helps us know if it's major or minor and know what to expect, whether it's a happy song or a gloomy song. But number two, probably the most important thing, if you're going to use pitch syllables, do, re, mi's, you got to know what note to start on. Okay, so that's why it's so important to know the tonality of the music. If I'm in the key of G, do does not go on C. Do goes on G. So, for example, in the song that we just looked at, the three rogues, the first note is D. And if I don't know any better, I'm going to put do on that first note. And that's not right. okay, because we're in the tonality of G, so G is the note that gets do. So we're going so, do, do, re. So make sure that you check the tonality before you start applying syllables to the music. Otherwise you're going to get off and it's not going to sound right. You'll notice that the pitch syllables just don't go well with the music if you're not on the right ones. So there's an introduction to tonality. Again, we're probably not going to be teaching a lot of this. You'll deal a little bit with key signatures in the later grades in elementary school. And you'll probably deal a little bit with chord symbols if you have instruments you can play on. Some schools have keyboards available to them. Some schools have melody bells. And that would allow you to do some chords. Also, if you're going to do some orff, you could do a bourdon on the first note of the scale and the fifth note of the scale. So if I'm in E flat, my bourdon would be E flat and B flat, because B flat's the fifth note of the scale. So important things for kind of more advanced techniques in music teaching, but they're great.